This is chapter number 2, from trade to territory. Trade to territory. So we are going to discuss basically about a company, a British company, that is East India Company. How this company came to our Indian subcontinent, and how this company started with trade, and then it created a whole power empire throughout the Indian subcontinent. So what happened was, if you see here, he is Aurangzeb. He was the last most powerful Mughal ruler. After this, whichever Mughal ruler came, you name Farrukh Sir, you name Shah Alam, or even for say Bahadur Shah Zafar, he was the last Mughal ruler. And if you talk about Akbar or Jahangir, like these powerful Mughal rulers, Aurangzeb was one of them. So when he died, he died in 1707. Now, different, prants were there, states were there, or regime empire were there. So the governors, the subedars, the zamindars, who are appointed by the Mughal emperor or given some task, they started showing their power. They started showing their authority. That is, they had a regional kingdom. Now they want to capture it, or they want to show the authority. That means Delhi, which was the key center or center point of the power, that is, from Delhi, whole subcontinent was administered Mughal Empire. Now this was not the effective center of power. If I take you to the second half of the 18th century, that is, I'm talking about 1750 plus. So this is second half of the 18th century. Here, a new power, a new regime, a new entity, new people, they came and they showed, they presented, and we found them on Indian subcontinent horizon, and they're called as British. You may call it as United Kingdom, you may call it as Angrez, you may call it as Scotland, Scottish. So originally, this Britishers, they came as, actually Britishers didn't came, a company came. So they were doing trading. That is, what is trading? They will buy some stuff from one place where it is cheaply available, for example 100 rupees, and wherever it is required, they sell it for 150. For example, 20 they incurred the expenses, 30 they have profit. Initially, this EIC, they don't want the power, they just want to trade. They didn't want to acquire territory or overpower any regime or overpower any king or chieftains. How, when they have no mood of this, how they become the masters of this big, vast empire? How these British were able to do that? So I'll show you a picture. It's a very heartbreaking picture. This is Bahadur Shah Zafar. And if you see here, what is the situation here? What happened at that time was, after Aurangzeb, there were no powerful ruler, but still Mughal rulers were there. The power was not there, but still they were there. So after, there was a very great incident, a protest, a revolution, that is 1857, 1857. So 1857, there was a rebellion, Vidroha, against the Britishers. In this rebellion, because everyone wanted a leader, every Andolan or every protest has to have a leader. So they wanted Bahadur Shah Zafar to be, and Bahadur Shah Zafar, you can say by default, became the leader of this 1857 British rebellion. Now this Bahadur Shah Zafar, because 1857 rebellion was crushed, it was broken down, Bahadur Shah Zafar along with his sons were captured and he was forced to leave this kingdom, that is the Indian subcontinent. So he was just sent, and the most heartbreaking thing is that his kids, his sons, were killed in front of his eyes. He is Captain Hudson, and Captain Hudson, he was responsible for capturing him as well as killing of his sons in front of his eyes, means Bahadur Shah Zafar. And after that, Mughal rule vanished and finished because the sons were killed. Right? There is a good saying, कितना है बदनसीब जफर दफन के लिए दो गज जमीन भी मिल न सकी कुएं यार में. That means he is so unfortunate, the Mughal emperor, that the land required to bury, he didn't get it in his country, in his where he has that empire. Now, before I go to East India Company, let me give you an idea the places we are talking about. This is British Island. You can call it as UK, United Kingdom, Britain. You can assume it to be there was a treaty, Scotland and England are together, right? So whenever we talk about Britishers, we're talking about English people and Scottish people. So they were coming from here. At that time, this short path was not open or was not so much used. Suez Nehar was not there. So this long path through the bottom of South Africa, that is, they used to come, all the French and Dutch and everyone, they used to come from here only. They used to come to India, Indian subcontinent. I'm not just saying that they only come to India. They would go to different places wherever they want to trade. But these different powers, the European powers, they used to come here for some trading because something are very good from of India, and they were great markets in Europe of this. So as I was talking about East India Company, if you should see the name has East, what does this East means? What happened? In 1600, this East India Company, it was a trading company. There was a charter. There was a Nirdesh order. She is Queen Elizabeth I. She was the Queen of English Empire. Now she granted the right, and let me tell you, it's a sole right, ekadhikar. She gave the sole right to East India Company that the east part of or whichever comes east of England, because if you see all this part is east to England, all these parts, the trading responsibility or only one company can trade, the sole right is with East India Company. That means no other company from this Britain or UK or England, there is no other competition, there is no other company who can trade here on the eastern part, which is shown here. Okay, so now this company has the sole right. So basically what they do, they go somewhere, they take stuff in cheap price, carry them back to Europe, take them back to Europe, and would sell at higher price wherever the demand is there. So there is a word called mercantile. Mercantile, as I said just now, that profit making, munafa, wanijik. Mercantile is wanijik. So I just told you that 100 and 150 number. So they just take, sell, in between they get profit, and sometimes they get good profit if the demand is higher. So these mercantile company at that time, at that point of time, I'm talking about 1600s, etc. So the East India Company, there will be other companies, say C1, C2, some other company. This EIC can only get profit when it has no competition or it is able to exclude C1 and C2 company from the trade. That is, they can only make profit or munafa when other companies are not there. I hope you got the idea. If only one company is there, they can make profit, or they can be so higher that C1, C2 doesn't exist. These are the possibilities. Now this charter, the royal charter that the East India Company got, was only about England, English companies. What about other powers of Europe? We have French, Portuguese, English, Danish, Dutch. What about those companies? They can always come. Only the English company, other company cannot compete with East India Company. But other companies, Danish, Dutch, French, Portuguese, they can come. So what we see here is, before the English could come to the Indian subcontinent, Portuguese was already there. Means they would come from this long path. It would take 6 to 8 months voyage, 6 to 8 months sailing. So the Portuguese, before even English can come, Portuguese were already there in Indian subcontinent, and they already showed their presence and they made their settlement or the existence in Goa. Okay, so they're already there in the western coast of India, and as I said, they made their base in Goa, which is a state today in India. So this is the eastern coast, this is the western coast I'm talking about. This place I'm talking about, this is Goa. And if you see in the bracket, I have written P. P is for the Portuguese. And in fact, Vasco da Gama, he was a Portuguese explorer by himself. So he was Vasco da Gama, and he was a Portuguese explorer who discovered the sea route to India in 1498. Because the first people to come into India, notably, are Portuguese. And who they have come, so somebody has to find the way. So in 1498, Vasco da Gama, he is the Portuguese explorer who first discovered the path, the sea route to India from Europe in 1498. So as I was saying, Portuguese were already there in Indian subcontinent. After that, what happened? By the early 17th century, Dutch came. They also wanted to have some trading possibility, see the trading possibility. Just after that, French came. So, Portuguese, Dutch, French all came, and we are talking about English company also. And there is one more which is not given in this chapter, is Danish, Denmark. These guys also came, and the problem was they all wanted to buy only one stuff, same thing. Because when we talk about India, or I'm talking about Indian subcontinent at that time, because there were no Pakistan or Bangladesh at that time. The English went and they partitioned us. That's a history. So these all different European companies, they wanted cotton, kapas, they wanted silk, resham. So this cotton and silk has a very huge, big, humongous market in back home, that is Europe. Along with this, Indian spices, that is pepper, kali mirch, cloves, long, cardamom, ilaichi, cinnamon, dalchini, all these were huge in demand in the European countries and elsewhere as well. So the problem here was that each and every company, only say one company will come, say East Indian Company. They'll come here and they'll ask the traders or the farmers, okay, give me this cardamom in 50 rupees. They will give them. But what about Portuguese? They will come and they'll say, the farmers or the traders, I'll buy it for 70. Now, say some other Dutch came and they'll come and they'll say, oh, no, not 70. I'll give you 100. Give it to me. That is, the competition has increased. The problem is the competition between these companies have increased. So when the margin of profit, it decreased, because it would have taken for 50 English company if Portuguese and Dutch is not there. So if it would have taken 150 and sell it in 200, he would have got profit of 150. But now he can only get, if 100 is the rate, he can only get profit of 100 rupees. So that is, the profits were reduced immensely, exponentially downwards. So if the company has to flourish in any trade, they have to crush, they have to stop, they have to eliminate, they have to, you can say, wipe out the rival competitors like the Portuguese, Dutch, etc. Right? So as I was saying, these English, Dutch, French, Portuguese, Danish, they started fighting together. They had fierce battle among them. Not only English and Dutch, Dutch and French, French and Portuguese. Everyone was fighting against one another. So previously people would come only through ships. So they would drown their ships, sang their ship regularly. Okay, these ships were loaded with with armed men. They have the top also, like the different way of artillery also they had. So they would block the routes. They would prevent these ships to go even if they have supplies. So basically, the trade was not going swiftly. The trade was carried out with muscle power, with arm, with artillery, with fight, with battle. This kind of trade was happening at that time. So if you go to Goa, let me give you an idea. You have a very famous fort. So why this fort was made? As I'm just saying, that these different companies were having fights. So if you see different places, Goa, Portuguese P, Diu, P, Portuguese, Agra, E, English were here, trading, Balasore, French were trading, and if you take any part of this, mostly Cochin, P, Portuguese, and you see this DA is also there, Danish are also there, that is the Tanque Bar. So all these companies were trading, and then when they are trading, they have to have some office, they have to have some base, they have to do trade. So they can't just come and take stuff and go away. They need to have some office, they need to have some house, they need to have some settlement. And now this settlement, because every company was fighting with each other, so they would make fort, kilebandi. Every company was forced to make fort, otherwise other company will target them. So if you want to save your stuff, you want to save your people, you are already alien and you are already fighting with the alien people. For example, you have Dutch. Now Dutch is alien power. It has come from Europe. Alien power, alien company. Now they will make a fort and they will tell me that if you make a fort, what about the local people? What about the local power? What about the local king, emperor, or whichever is holding the authority or power? Will they be happy that you have come for trading and you are making fort? You are making big fort, right? So they were not happy, and this was the cause of conflict between the foreign powers and the Indians, right? And that is how these local rulers, because the conflict started, because of this fortification to save themselves from other companies, the trading companies which came only as traders, they cannot be away from politics. This is how Rajniti came. This is how politics came, because now they have to confront, they have to solve this conflict between the local ruler also. For example, Tipu Sultan, he had very good relationship with the French. Tipu Sultan were not having that much good relationship with the English company, because English were very dominating. French were doing, and French were helpful also. Okay. Now coming to only East India Company, I am talking only about East Indian Company now, because we are talking about Britishers. We are talking about India, this Indian subcontinent where English ruled for more than 200 years. So East India Company, the first factory, it's in Bengal, right? The first factory or English factory which was set up by the East India Company, which was actually a trading company in Bengal, on the banks of the river, very famous river called Hooghly. The first factory, let me tell you again, the first factory, this can be asked in multiple choice, okay? The first factory by East India Company in Indian subcontinent or in Bengal, say it's 1651, on the banks of this river Hooghly. Let me show you that river Hooghly. It will be very important. Okay, see here, this is river Hooghly, and these are the different factories. So first factory, as I said, 1615. E means the capital E inside the brackets means English. So here we have English people. Now They made the settlement. They made the factory. So in this factory, those officers who used to take care of the work, that is, some people of English origin would take care of the company trade. So they were called as factors. Okay. Now here, the company will have all the stuff. So they need to have warehouses, godam, store, because they want to store it so that they can export it. So the warehouses were also being built. Okay. When you know that the ship has to come, you have to have something in the warehouse so that you can put it on, that is upload it, and when ship come, you can offload it. Now these trade expanded, their trade expanded, and because there were traders and merchants, saudagar and merchants, that is those trading partners, say it may be Indians, so they were trading with them. You can call it them as the middleman. So these company people, because they were getting huge profits, they asked or they persuaded these merchant and traders, why don't you come here and stay here? Means, please come here, we have a factory, you stay here only. And when these people came, they started residing here. Now the company made a fort, a build, you can say a boundary in terms of fort. At that time, there was no concept of a boundary. It was only fort. You want to save yourself, you make a fort. So now this company made a fort because it has an establishment, it has a store and different warehouses. And there is one more thing they did. They gave or they bribed Mughal Empire people. Those say officials of Mughal Empire, these East India Company people, they bribed these people, they gave them money under the table, and they took the zamindari or the revenue, land revenue rights of 3 villages. So they took the zamindari or the land revenue rights of 3 villages, and these 3 villages, one of the village is called as Kalikata. Kalikata. Okay, you remember what this name? This is only the Calcutta and this is the only Kolkata. Kalikata is Calcutta and it is Kolkata. This is now the capital of West Bengal. West Bengal is a state of Indian empire today. Okay, Indian state. So one more thing happened. It didn't happen here. This East India Company, because they were doing great trade, they went to Aurangzeb and they requested him or persuaded him that please issue a farman. And this farman or order, this is a order, a royal order, that the company can trade duty free. That means you don't have to pay any taxes when you trade. Okay? In whole subcontinent, the company, and this is when the Aurangzeb is giving this, or when the Mughal emperor is giving this, everyone would have to abide it. That is, the company won't give any tax at all. Right? And this tax was the only money the people were getting so that they can have good empire, these other local leaders, local chieftains. Right? So company was not giving money because of this farman. What about other aspect? There were people, there were officials in this East India Company. They were doing their private work also. They were doing private trading also. That is, they were belonging to East India Company. They were officers of East India Company, but they were also doing their private business, that is private trading also they were doing. So when this East India Company was not giving money to Bengal, that is the Bengal Empire, they were not giving tax because they were said, we got a farman from the Aurangzeb. But what about these people who were also doing private trade? Bengal is a very big, huge state at that time, huge empire. So they were not giving any tax and all the trade is under the control of East India Company now. So you tell me, when you don't get a trade, how these Nawabs will survive? Can you imagine this Murshid Quli Khan will not say anything? It will not protest anyone? It will not question anyone? He will. Because all the trade, the money actually that they were getting to have this empire, to have this Nawabiness, is through taxes. And these taxes, they were not getting. East India Company and the people of East India Company, they said, we don't want to give. This is a picture of Madras. It's not Calcutta. It's not West Bengal, okay? This is all trading, small ships would come. This is the picture of that. How trade led to the battles. So what we talked about is East India Company, this company, other companies also come from different other European giants. So they wanted to trade. So East India Company and other company, they fought. And because of this, they wanted to protect themselves. So wherever they keep their stuff, they will make fort, killa. So they will fortify their settlements. The second thing what happened, that East India Company got a farman from Aurangzeb, or they persuaded him to deliver a farman that this company, East India Company, can trade anywhere in this Indian subcontinent without any paying any tax. So the money comes from what? Any place, land revenue, tax. So East India Company was doing all the trade. So from here the problem starts. This is Bengal. Now Bengal was not getting tax, and the East India Company, because of the farman, they were saying we won't give any tax. So this is 1700 and above. That is, I'm talking about early 18th century. The conflict between these two, that is the company and the Nawabs of Bengal, it actually intensified. Let me tell you, East India Company started with Bengal. So the Nawab and East India Company, the tussle, the problem, the conflict, it intensified, it emancipated. But till Aurangzeb was there, they didn't fight. Till Aurangzeb was there. But after the death of Aurangzeb, that was, he was the last known strong ruler, Mughal Empire ruler. So now these Bengal Nawabs, they started showing their power, and they were already had some autonomy, but full autonomy they proclaimed. So power and autonomy, that this is our place. We are the Nawabs of Bengal, and now we are ready to do what we want. So as I talked about, last time also I showed his picture, Murshid Quli Khan. And after that, he was followed by Alivardi Khan, and he was followed by Nawab Sirajuddaulah. And these all three, mind it, all these three were strong ruler. They were strong ruler. That means not even a single of them were weak. They were all strong. So what they did? First of all, they said, okay, now we are showing our power and autonomy. We are not going to give any concession to company. Company has to give the tax. You are doing tax here in Bengal. You have to give money to us. You have to give tax. Along with this, you have to give us gift, tributes. This is our place. If you want to have trade, if you want right of trade, you have to give us tribute. Okay? Give us gift, give us money. And along with this, they wanted to coin or mint coins, this company. They said, the Nawab said, no minting of coins here. They stopped it. And also, the company were making, extending the fortification. They said, no fortification from now. Okay? They said, no fortification. Along with this, these Nawabs accused them that this company is actually not giving tax. It is depriving the state of Bengal that from the revenue it owns. So this is East India Company. First of all, a company is not even talking about the valor of Nawab. That is, it is undermining the authority of Nawab. They are not giving izzat. Also, they are not paying taxes. Also, writing disrespectful letters. That is, company is writing letter to Nawab which is very bad in words. Okay? That is, they are trying to humiliate or undermine or not give respect to the Nawabs and his officials. So this is the point of view of Nawabs, that company is not doing well. If you want to do trade here, first you have to be respectful. Second thing, you have to pay what we say. Now, company work on the other hand, it was convinced. Company said we have to extend our this settlements. We want more villages. We want to buy more villages. As I said, 3 villages they already bought. Zamindari actually, and they wanted to enlarge or extend their settlements. They want to buy more villages and they want to fortify, rebuild all the forts. Now the Nawabs are saying something else. They are saying don't do this. Company is convinced and they are determined. We will do that only. So now there will be a conflict. There will be a conflict. There will be a problem. So this confrontation led to the famous battle which is called Battle of Plassey. Battle of Plassey. Okay. So this was all the reason I told you. This is the reason of Plassey. Let me tell you what is this Plassey. This is a place. Now it was not Plassey, it was Palashi. This place was called as Palashi, where the fight took place, where the war took place, is Palashi because there is a tree called as Palash, a tree known as Palash, and it would give, or you can have red flowers, beautiful flowers from this Palash tree. They produce this, and by this we can also produce through this red flowers gulal. We can use it in Holi, famous festival of India. So the English cannot speak Palashi, so they started calling it as Plassey. And this Plassey is now known as the War of Plassey. Now you understood why this all Plassey happened. This was the main reason why Plassey happened. So now let us come to Plassey. Okay, as I told you, Alivardi Khan, he died in 1756. After this, 1756, Alivardi Khan, he was also a strong ruler. He dies in 1756. Now, Sirajud-Dowla, he became Nawab of Bengal. He is Nawab Sirajud-Dowla. The company has its own game plan. Sirajud-Dowla is also strong. Alivardi was also strong. And previously, Murshid Quli Khan was also strong. Now, the company wanted that we don't want these strong rulers. We want a puppet ruler. A ruler which will be under our control. That is, we can move the ruler with our hands like strings, like the puppet moves. Okay, we can control this man. We can control this puppet Nawab, so that this person can give us all the trade concessions, also all the privilege sukh suvidhaएं which a company should get, so that it can trade easily without any conflict or problem. But Sirajud-Dowla got to know that there is some background game this company is playing. And he said, don't meddle with our political affairs. Okay? Don't come in between our political affairs. So Sirajud-Dowla was not very happy. That why are you are trying to overthrow me. You are trying to put a puppet in my place. So he got angry. Of course. So he took 30,000 soldiers, and there is a place called Qasim Bazar, and there was a factory, English factory in Qasim Bazar. This is also in Bengal. So in Qasim Bazar, there was a factory, English factory. Sirajud-Dowla, along with 30,000 soldiers, he went there. He captured all the company officials here in this factory. The warehouse, the store, he locked the warehouse. And all the Englishmen there, all the Europeans, he disarmed them. All the pistols or bandooks or whatever they have, they disarmed. All these were disarmed. Also, the ships which are coming, they also blocked them. On the English ship, they block it. They produce a blockade. Now, this was not enough. They started marching towards Calcutta, Kalikata or Kolkata, because the company fort which was there in Calcutta, they wanted to cover or they wanted to control this company's fort in Calcutta. But all these things were happening. The Angrez, British, that is the authority above these people, because they were governor generals and they were generals in the region they have. So in Madras, there was a general, and he was called as, that is the Madras command. The head was Robert Clive. So if you see, he is Robert Clive. So when company came to know that the Sirajuddaulah is doing all this, and he has already taken control of Qasim Bazaar factory, and now he is moving to Calcutta. So now the company sent from Madras Robert Clive, okay, along with the soldiers and the naval fleets, that is the ships with all the armaments. So Robert Clive, along with the soldiers and naval fleet. So there were, some kind of negotiations between Nawab and Robert Clive. But finally, when the thing didn't materialize, there was no deliberation possible. In 1757, there was a आमने-सामने की लड़ाई, and this was the Battle of Plassey. Okay, so Robert Clive, Sirajuddaulah and East India Company, they fought on Plassey, ground of Plassey, in 1757. So 1757, Plassey 1757. In between which parties? Company, that is the English, and these Sirajuddaulah forces. Now Sirajuddaulah, he actually got defeated. He was very strong, but still he got defeated. The main reason of his defeat was a person or a man called Mir Jafar. Okay, because he was also a commander, Senapati. So he was one of because Sirajuddaulah has number of Senapati, number of commanders. Now one of the commander, Mir Jafar, he didn't took part in this battle. He didn't fight in this battle. So when he never entered this battle, the power of Sirajuddaulah was less. So Robert Clive also, on the background, he played a game. He said Mir Jafar that if we can capture Sirajuddaulah, stop Sirajuddaulah, we are going to make you the head of or Nawab of Bengal. So Robert Clive or the company always wanted a puppet Nawab. So Mir Jafar was happy, ghar ka bhedi lanka dhai. So there were people always who take advantage. So Mir Jafar, he backstabbed Sirajuddaulah, and he wanted to become Nawab, and company made a plan with him, and finally under Plassey or on the Plassey, Sirajuddaulah battle, he lost. Now why this Plassey is so important? Because here English or Britishers, they won a war against a very powerful opponent in India, in Indian subcontinent. So this is how they entered India, you can say properly. Because when they fought against Sirajuddaulah, the strong leader, they actually entered. Let me tell you, there were English people back home, that is UK. They were saying that this East India Company is not doing well. They were not trusting them. They were doubting them. So Robert Clive also wrote a letter, that everything is all right and all these kind of things were happening there. What about the after effects of Plassey? Now Sirajuddaulah got defeated. He was assassinated. Sirajuddaulah was assassinated, killed, and Mir Jafar was made the Nawab as promised by company. So till now, as I said, Plassey was already done. The company, it was still not taking the responsibility of administration. They were saying, no, we won't take administration. They were saying, they have an argument, but we always have the Mir Jafar kind of people. Why would we, find ourselves in administration? They said, we'll do only the trade, and they were very reluctant, very unwilling for administration. Still now, after Plassey also. So the main objective of this company was, or the key was, that we will do the trade, we'll try to expand this trade to all these subcontinent and nearby areas. That is what they wanted. Now, company did that, but it found it very difficult to work with these puppet Nawabs. Because the Nawabs, Mir Jafar, when they wanted Nawabi, they will do everything. But when they will become Nawab, for example, he become Nawab of Bengal, Now they have to satisfy the people also there. They have to be the common man. So they were not very helpful to the company always, because company wanted all the concessions and sukh suvidhaएं, right? So when Mir Jafar actually protested against or went against company, he deposed him, and in place of him, Mir Qasim was in place, was put in his place. Now Mir Qasim was made the Nawab of Bengal, displacing Mir Jafar. Okay, but the thing with Mir Jafar and Mir Qasim will remain same. Mir Qasim will also, he is not Nawab also. So for time being, he will be happy, he will be favoring EIC, but not always. Nawabi aa gayi. So now the same thing will be repeated. So there was a fight when Mir Qasim went against Robert Clive, or you can say the East India Company. There was a battle of Buxar. So now this Buxar, this is a place in Bihar. So this is how Buxar happened, 1764. So the fight was between Mir Qasim and the company. Again, what will happen? They reinstated Mir Jafar one more time. They again made Mir Jafar as the Nawab. But now Mir Jafar cannot do anything. 5 lakh, okay? That is 5 lakh rupees he has to give every month. Second thing, company wanted money told him that you have to finance our wars. That is, you have to give us money for the war. 5 lakh rupees along with plus the money to finance the war any company will be taking. Okay, and also all the trade demands, because they were still trading company. So whatever trading you can say benefits they want, Mir Jafar has to provide. So now Mir Jafar was actually a puppet, because he was reinstated second time. Now in 1765, Mir Jafar, he died. In 1765, Mir Jafar died. So now what to do? Company thought, okay, we are all done with all these puppet Nawabs. We have tried Mir Jafar, we have tried Mir Qasim. Now what we will do? We will be Nawabs ourselves. We have to become Nawabs rather than having Mir Qasim, Mir Jafar or Indian people. Previously it was unwilling. Now they decided, all done, and said, now we have to be a Nawabs. Right? So what happened? One more thing happened. In 1765 only, the Mughal emperor, I guess Shah Alam too was there. He gave company the Diwani of provinces of Bengal. That is, in Bengal now all the resources, all the money giving content is now with the East India Company. I don't know why it happened, but Mughal emperor actually gave them the Diwani. All the tax, all the money, all the revenue, all the kar. Now the company is whole soul. Because they have got the Diwani, or they are now the Diwans of Bengal. Diwan means the Diwan is the person who takes care of all the revenue and taxes and money. So if I take you to earlier 18th century, trade of East India Company actually expanded exponentially. But still, whenever they have to buy certain goods, they need to bring this gold and silver, and they trade using this gold and silver. This gold and silver is bought from UK or Britain. So if they want to buy silk or cotton or spices, Indian spices, they have to trade it through gold and silver. Now this will happen till what? But now they have got the Diwani of Bengal. They have the gold outflow actually slowed after Battle of Plassey, because they already won Plassey. But this Diwani, first happy thing for the company was Battle of Plassey. They already had a power. Now after getting Diwani, it was just happy hours for them. They don't have to pay anything. No gold, no silver. They are getting all the revenues from India only. That is, Diwani they have all the Plasseys, won the Plasseys. They don't need any gold and silver. So they will take care of their own cotton silk textiles purchasing by the money they take as revenue from India only, from our subcontinent only. Now they can make their all tools, maintain their tools, they can make their offices. Okay. Now the money they are getting as revenue, they can do everything. Okay. So this is all the stepwise thing I explained. Now there is a word which was very popular at that time. That was called nabobs. Nabobs. You can relate it with kebab. Nabob. Now this word has come from Nawab only. As I said, Palasi is actually Palashi. So English people cannot pronounce this Palashi. So they started talking, or they started naming it as Palasi. Similarly, because we also cannot speak certain English words so clearly, any Indian. So that is how they started calling Nawabs and Nabobs. But this Nabob is not not Nawab. I am telling you, this is a different word. And this is the word who told this, who referred this Nabob. I am just telling you. Let me give you a background. After the Plassey, what happened? From Mir Jafar, they started taking this 5 lakh and they wanted them to give them all the tributes and gifts, etc. So all these people of the officials of East India Company, they were getting a lot of money. They were getting gift, they were getting personal gift, money, etc. The company officials. So some of these officials were getting a lot of money and they became very rich. Let me talk about Robert Clive. When he got so much money, I'll tell you, when he came to our Indian subcontinent, he came to Madras, he was just 18 years of age. And Robert Clive came to India in 1743. He was just 18. But when he left India after working here, when he went back finally, you know how much money he had? He had more than 4 lakh sterlings. 401,102 sterling to be very precise. And this is a huge, humongous amount of money till date. After, see, it's 1743, we're talking about 2021. Still, till now, this money is a huge money. Only Robert Clive got this money. You can imagine about others. And there is an interesting thing. He was twice made as governor. So when he was appointed the governor of Bengal, he was this Robert Clive who was actually taking a lot of money. He was given the task of curbing or stopping the corruption in a company. Robert Clive, who was himself so corrupt, he was given the authority to remove the corruption. Can you imagine? This is how interesting thing goes. And what happened here? Robert Clive, this much of money, everyone will question no. So the British Parliament actually cross-examined him, Robert Clive, that how did you got this much money? There is a whole court case in 1774. Actually, 1772. He was acquitted. That means Robert Clive was said that okay, he didn't do anything wrong. Okay, but still 1774 he committed suicide. So I was talking about Nabob. This is the background. Now Nabob is what? I talked about this Robert Clive. Everyone was getting money. So the people who are coming from UK or Britain, the basic idea was they'll come here. India was sone ki chidiya. They will make money from here. They'll go back and they will live a good life, ash ki life. They'll go there, go back and have a laid back, lovely life. All of them cannot do that. Some deceased, some was confronted with disease, some died in war. All of them didn't get that much of fortune as Clive has. A lot of money they didn't get. But most of the officers which were coming from very humble background, that is very moderate, middle class. UK also has middle class. So when they come here, the basic idea was they will earn money and they'll go back to UK, Britain, and they'll have a good life. So those who used to come and they used to make money and they go back to UK and they are living good life with a lot of money they had. These people, the English people will call them as Nabob. Okay, this Nabob is the name given to these people who take all the money, go back, stay there with a good life. So the English people would tell these officials who have returned from India as Nabobs. So this Nabob is actually the Englishized name, which was actually Nawab. So Nabob is Nawab only. I'll tell you about Robert Clive just a bit more. Nawab, this Clive said when Plassey he actually won Plassey, and he said when I defeated all the other princes were dependent on me. The opulent means the paisa or samriddh city, big city was at my mercy. Daya pe thi, opulent, and all the vaults, all the khazana, all the money containing containers were open to me. Gold and jewels, all were in my control. All I can just get them wherever I want. Now Robert Clive is saying to the parliament that you understand, I had everything. You are taking me to the court or asking a question. I am astonished that I was so moderate. That is, this 4 lakh is no money. I could have had 100 times more than this much which I had. Okay, because after Plassey, I had everything to get money. Now, company rule expands. So what we discussed earlier was East India Company, how it emancipated or expanded. Truly, it was a trading company. So the politics came, the things came when they came here. So they have to come into politics. They started in Bengal and they had Mir Jafar, Mir Qasim as puppets in place of the Nawabs. And the company never, previously from 1757 to 1857, they never had a military attack directly on any unknown territory, the territory which they don't know. But they did something because they wanted to extend their influence, because they want to annex, they want to control, they want to get their land, they want to get the power. So what they did? They used the tactics, political, economical and diplomatic. That is politics, they use this Rajniti. Economic means Arthik and diplomatic means Kutnitik. So this kind of variety of methods or process or techniques they used in order to get that land, to get the power. Because as I said, from 1757 to 1857, they rarely attacked directly on any territory which is alien to them, which is not known to them. Right? Okay. But after Buxar, when Buxar happened in 1764, after Buxar, what they did, they started a new thing. They appointed whichever states in which they controlled or they annexed, they would appoint residents. That is, in Buxar, when they won, they appointed a resident. That is, their men only, that is, an Englishman only, as a resident. Basically, he was an agent. He was an agent politically and commercially working for the company. That is, why do you respect the neta or leader? Because this respect is only when you want some work to be done. So the interest of the company is taken care by this political and commercial agent, who was actually the main person, key between the ruler and the company. Hope you got the idea. So East India Company, through this resident, it is actually interfering or controlling the internal affairs of the Indian state which they have annexed or controlled. For example, who is going to be the next Raja or Rani? Who is going to be the successor of the throne? Who is going to be given a good positions, administrative position, or whom they have to throw? So sometimes they would do subsidiary alliance. Sahayak Sandhi it is called as. So they would force the state sometimes for subsidiary alliance. For example, if this is a if one place we can say, they will say you will not have any armed forces, you will not have, but the protection is given by East India Company. This is the subsidiary alliance. That is, the state will not have its own army, no army, but you have to pay for the army which East India Company is keeping in order to provide protection to your state. This is called the subsidiary alliance. Okay, basically the state have to pay for the subsidiary forces, the Sahayak army, for them, whichever Suba, whichever province we are talking about, state we are talking about, they have to pay for these forces which East India Company is keeping in order to maintain these forces, because they are saying that we are providing protection. But sometimes the states or the different provinces, they wouldn't pay. They fail to pay because they are not getting that payment or that revenue. So sometimes they wouldn't pay, and when the payment which is under the subsidiary alliance, so this company will take away some part of their territory. That is, one part they will take, because you're not paying the payment, so you have to give penalty. So give us the penalty, and they take the penalty in terms of territory. For instance, let me tell you about Richard Wellesley. Richard Wellesley, when he was Governor General from 1798 to 1805. Now this Richard Wellesley, he forced to give half of the regime or territory which Nawab of Awadh owned in 1801. So half of the part, the Nawab of Awadh, that is the Awadh area, half of the part has to be given to Richard Wellesley or the company in 1801. I'm talking about Hyderabad also. Hyderabad also, because of the subsidiary alliance, because they fail to pay the subsidiary forces, they have to have a penalty, and they have to give a lot of places. So resident, there are two words which has come here. I have told you about resident. The two words, injunction. Injunction is basically nirdesh or instruction, the order. And subservience means submissiveness. That is dabbupan. That is, if you say something, I'll just abide by that. I will not ask question. I'll show you a picture also. He is Nawab Shujauddaulah of Awadh. Now, after Buxar, there was a treaty. Most of the authority of Shujauddaulah was taken away. But still, if you see, he is still showing his splendor. Now, I am talking about a very great man. He is Tipu Sultan, a great name for India, a great name who fought against British with all his might, power and valor. He is called Tipu Sultan, the tiger of Mysore, Sher-e Mysore. Please remember, Sher is lion, okay? But he was called as tiger of Mysore, Sher-e of Mysore. So what they did, as I said, the company, they don't want to go and direct attack. But now sometimes they have to attack. They would use direct military attack. Because if something happens to their trade, their political and economic interest, if they saw or if they see any threat, they will go and do the military confrontation. This company will do that. Okay, so we'll take an example of this Mysore. Now there are two names, Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. Hyder Ali, we are talking about Mysore. Now when Hyder Ali was there, and when Tipu Sultan after this, so Hyder Ali was between 1761, he ruled from 1761 to 1782. Just after that, from 1782 to 1799, Tipu Sultan ruled Mysore. Now the main point is, they both are strong. These rulers were strong rulers. They were not just ordinary rulers. Okay? So that is why they did certain things which made the company to have confrontation with them. Military attack. So as I said, Mysore right from the Hyder Ali area till Tipu Sultan, they controlled everything. They had power. And if I show you the area, this is the peninsular region of India I'm showing you. This is Malabar and this is the Coromandel coast. So Malabar coast is the left side which I'm showing you. Now this Malabar coast, most of the port area is controlled by this Mysore regime. Now the company would do what? Black gold, pepper, they would trade. They would do cardamom, okay, elaichi. So sandalwood also, sandalwood, chandan. So spices basically. So sandalwood, pepper, cardamom, through their kingdom. These all were under trade, under company. 1785, what he did, Tipu Sultan, he said, no export will be done through our port. The port which we control, no export will be done. Okay, remember what I said: sandalwood, pepper, cardamom, because it is the ports are in their kingdom, and they also said that ports will not do any export. Along with this, because every export was through these ports only. Ships were coming, ships were going. Along with this, Tipu Sultan said the local people, local merchant, local traders, all these local will not work with company. They will not trade with company. They will not help company. Okay. There's one more thing. Because the French colony was there, French people were there. So Tipu Sultan had a very great relationship with the French people. That is how the French actually made his, they helped his army to be modernized. So the relationship with French, and French helped them to Tipu to modernize their army or his army. Now here British got furious. First of all, British has a problem with French, and British has problem with now Tipu. So the British thought that Hyder Ali initially and now Tipu, they are quite ambitious, arrogant, dangerous people, and dangerous for what? They trade. So now they need to crush them. And if it's very interesting that Mysore and East India Company, they fought 4 wars. First is from 1767 to 69. Second was 1780 to 84. Then 1790 to 92. This was the third war. And finally, the battle of Seringapatam, Srirangapatnam in Hindi we call it, Seringapatam, 1799. This was the last battle. And here, after being defeated or not getting through, finally in 1799, the famous battle of Seringapatam, company got victory. They defeated Tipu Sultan, and finally they killed Tipu, or you can say Tipu was killed defending Seringapatam, which was the capital of famous Mysore. Okay? And what happened after that? Because now company has control. So before that, this Mysore area and the Seringapatam was, before Hyder Ali and Tipu, this was controlled by a very, trading kind of dynasty called as Wadiyars. Wadiyars were controlling this area. And then Tipu Sultan was killed. And finally they made Wadiyars, and same thing, subsidiary alliance were imposed. This was imposed on this, that you will not have any army, we will give you army, you have to pay for the army. This is what these Britishers did for this regime, this area. Now various things happen, and some are very, very tragic actually, because there were many wars. So this is Lord Cornwallis which you see here, and these are the son of Tipu Sultan. Can you imagine? These sons of Tipu Sultan were taken as hostages because the company forces were defeated by Hyder Ali and Tipu number of times. But in 1792, there were three different regimes which were fighting against Tipu. First Maratha, second Nizam of Hyderabad, and the company. So 3 were fighting against Tipu, and Tipu has to sign a treaty. And this Sandhi, this treaty was, his 2 sons will be taken as hostages. Can you imagine at that time? This kind of treaties were done. And Indians were fighting against Indians. Okay. I'll show you a picture. This is a big mechanical toy that Tipu had. Tipu possessed. So this is a tiger which is mauling a European soldier, or it's killing actually. Mauling means cutting and killing. So this is Tipu's toy tiger. If you turn the handle, the toy tiger will produce the voice roar like this, and the soldier will like this. Soldier shrieked. So this kind of voices will come when the handle will be turned. And this khilona, this toy, is now in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. When Tipu died on Seringapatam, 4th May 1799, British took this toy along with them, and now it is at British Museum. I'll tell you a story before that. Let me show you an idea or the map of Seringapatam. This is 1792. The whites are British, the blacks are the French and natives, like the French and the Mysoreans. Now I'll tell you a story. Why do we call Tipu Sultan as Sher-e Mysore? Please remember, Sher is lion, but here we are talking about tiger. So all the good stories about Tipu Sultan was there. I'll tell you a story. What happened when Tipu Sultan became ruler of Mysore in 1782? So he went for hunting along with his French friend. So when they went for shikar hunting, they came face to face with a tiger. So there was a tiger, and now Bagh. Basically, it's a tiger. It's a Bagh. Okay. So he should be called as Sher-e, not Baghe Mysore, but he is Sher-e Mysore. Now what happened here? That when they were confronted with this tiger, Tipu Sultan gun didn't work. It didn't work. And the dagger, that is the katar, a kind of knife, it fell down on the ground. So now there was a battle. Hand-held, unarmed. Tipu Sultan fought with all power and valor, and finally he managed to pick up the dagger and kill the tiger. That is why we call him as Tiger of Mysore. In Hindi we call as Sher-e Mysore. Okay. So he also has a tiger on his flag. Tipu Sultan has a tiger in his dynasty flag. So that is why this story was so important, and his power was shown in this, and he showed it actually. He fought. He took a stand against the Britishers, right? Now after this, what happened? Because the Britishers were all going, moving and annexing different regimes. So Marathas also had the same fate. So let me show you the Maratha region. I'll talk about Gwalior, Indore, Nagpur, Pune. So these are different, covered by different, Sardars. I'll just talk about that. Just remember, this region were all Maratha Empire in 1760. I'm talking about. Okay. So I'm talking about the late 18th century. That is what 1716 I'm saying. So let us take 1780 and go before that, 1760. So now the Marathas, if you remember, Maratha fought a famous war of Panipat in 1761. That is from Pune, they went up to Panipat. They wanted to control Delhi. But now in 1761, the Panipat was between Afghans and the Marathas. And since the Marathas were annexing and controlling and countering and defeating various different regimes, the problem was Marathas were not being supported. That is why the Ahmad Shah Abdali, the Afghans and different other allies, they confronted Marathas, and finally Marathas' dream of ruling Delhi was shattered because they lost in Panipat in 1761. Okay, so now this Maratha state was divided into different states, the Maratha regime, and there are different Sardars, or you can say chief. So these are 4 parts. I'll talk about Sindhya Gwalior, Holkar Indore type, Gaikwad and Bhosle, Bhosle Nagpur. Okay, so this is Gaikwad coming to this Pune area, right? Now these four, that is Sindhia, Holkar, Gaikwad and Bhosle, these were chiefs, but they were under a single control of Peshwa. That is, they all were independent but together under the control of Peshwa. Peshwa is nothing but principal minister. It started from Shivaji, right time. Okay, Peshwa is principal minister. From Shivaji it started. So they had a confederacy. Confederacy means they were in alliance. They won't fight against one another. They will help each other like this. So this is confederacy under Peshwa. So now they had the military and administrative head based in Pune, which is Peshwa I am talking about. And I'll tell you the names also. Some of the names are very famous. So Maratha made an alliance. Four, let me tell you again, because this is very important. This is the question being asked. Which are the four which are under confederacy in Maratha? So you need to remember these four: Sindhia, Holkar, Gaikwad, Bhosle. Now I'll tell you the names. They were so powerful people which Maratha produced, like Mahaji Sindhia and Nana Fadnis. These were famous Maratha soldiers, and they were statesmen also, like Rajnitik, political. They have quite good view of politics. Now finally, as I said, Tipu Sultan was subdued. Similarly, Marathas were also subdued by a number of wars. So it's called Anglo-Maratha War. Anglo-Maratha War. So finally, what happened? See, I'll tell you about one war. First war between this Anglo-Maratha War, 1782. No one won. So it ended with the Treaty of Salbai. Okay, there was no clear victor. Second Anglo-Maratha War was from 1803 to 05. 1803 to 05. And different front fighting was done. And after this, British got control of Odisha and the northern part of Yamuna. That is Agra and Delhi also. This is Yamuna. This is the Yamuna. So northern part, which is a very important part, fertile part. So they got control of Odisha as well as this Agra and Delhi. Then the third war, which was the Anglo-Maratha War of 1817 to 19. Finally, the Marathas were crushed. Means finally their power were crushed. And this Peshwa, which was the key figure, principal minister, he was removed and he was sent away to Bithur. Bithur is a place near Kanpur. And he was given pension. Okay, you go, we'll give you money every month. Pension. So Bithur, he was sent. Now, when he was sent, the company has total control over the south of the Vindhyachal. Okay, this portion. That is almost all. That is how the empire of this British went ahead. Now they have already crushed, subdued Marathas, Mysore. Now they started claiming the paramountcy. That is Sarvoch. Paramountcy, that if I take you to the early 19th century, that is, I'm talking about 1800 plus. Here, initially, company never wanted to be away from trade. They said, okay, we are just trading. Then they came for military attacks, aggressive. Now this aggressiveness they enhanced. So they wanted to expand their territory. And here is a person I'm showing you. He is called Lord Hastings, Lord Warren Hastings. Now when he was the Governor General from 1813 to 1823, he came up with a new policy. And this new policy was called paramountcy, and that is called Sarvochata. So he started this policy, niti. He said, we are at top, we are elite, we are on the top of the chain of power. That is, we are above all the Indian state, not Indian people, but Indian state. Okay, we have greater power, supreme power. Okay. Now, if something happens which affect our trade, that is, in order to protect our interest, company says, in order to protect our interest it is always justified that I can or we can take the state under our control, we can annex them, or we can threaten them that we are going to take your state if you come in between our interests, especially the trade interest, right? This was the claim of paramountcy. What do you think? They are from foreign. People here, they will keep quiet. This paramountcy never went unchallenged. That is, people challenged it, people protested it. I'll give an example. Rani Channamma. I'll come to Rayanna just now. Rani Channamma. So I'm writing RC for Rani Channamma. Now she is a very small state called Kittur. It's present day Karnataka. So she was the Rani of Kittur. That is a very small state. But when this paramountcy was imposed on Kittur, what she did? She took arms and she started a movement, anti-British resistant movement. But she fought bravely. But in 1824 she was arrested, and in 1829 Rani Channamma died. But soon after, this man, he is called Rayanna. Though he was not a powerful, means he didn't come from a powerful background, but he was from Sangoli in Kittur, and he was just a poor chowkidar, right? A watchman. But he took that resistance that Rani Channamma started ahead. So he carried forward that resistance. So what Rani Channamma did, Rayanna, though he was a poor watchman chowkidar, he actually destroyed the British camps. He actually destroyed the British records, like the documents, etc. So he did that. But finally, this resistance came into end. And this paramountcy, Rayanna says, what kind of paramountcy it is? We are Indians. We hold this state. We are from here. How can you come and just kill us? How can you come and just take our state? But, everything ended in hanging of Rayanna. He was caught in just after 1 year, because Channamma, she died in 1829. Just after 1 year, Rayanna was hanged till death by the Hastings and East India Company. Right? Now I'll take you some place else, because in late 1830s what happened? It is not related to India. I'm talking about late 1830s. The company became very worried about Russia. Now Russia was a superpower then, and the power was increasing, ever increasing. I'm not talking about today's Russia, the Russia which was combined Russia, USSR kind of Russia. So this Russia power, Russia might, British thought that Russia may increase their might or power, and they may enter through northwest. So this is Russia, it is coming from here. So from northwest area, it may enter, because others were also entering. They have seen the Dutch, the British, the French, the Danish, the others. Okay, so they don't want any confrontation with Russia. So they wanted to control this area. The whole northwest, they wanted to control. That is the today part of Afghanistan and say Pakistan, that is Sindh, and Punjab. So Afghanistan, so they wanted to secure it because they were worried about Russia. So what they did, first they had a very prolonged war, very long war with Afghanistan, and this was between 1838 and 1842. So this war was around 4 years, and finally they got the control. So now they established an indirect company rule, not direct. There was not company there, but indirect company control was there. Then they went to Sindh. Just below Afghanistan there is Sindh. 1843 they got Sindh also, Punjab, that is the present day Pakistan area, most of the Pakistan area. So I'm just shifting it up because Afghanistan is at the top, below that is Sindh, and just below that we have Punjab. Now the next step, was Punjab. So they also wanted to annex Punjab and rule Punjab. But Punjabis are no game. They are strong people. Punjabis Sikhs, they are warriors. They are Singh, their name is warrior. Here was Maharana Ranjit Singh. Maharana Ranjit Singh, he held back the company. He was in front and company couldn't go ahead of him. You know, the power, the valor these Sikhs and Punjabis had, nobody could beat them. But the problem was 1839, Ranjit Singh, he died. And that was very unfortunate. And there were two wars. And finally, after so much of effort, see, after 6 years, Afghanistan they took in 1842. Just after that, Sindh they took in 1843. And it took them around 6 years to get Punjab. So 1849, they took control and they Adhigrahan kiya, annexed Punjab. Now let me tell you about Lord Dalhousie. I am talking about doctrine of lapse. So they were annexing. They annexed Afghanistan, then Sindh, then Punjab. They wanted to annex more. So this is the wave. This was the final wave of annexation or taking control of a territory. So Lord Dalhousie, what he did? They wanted to control. So Lord Dalhousie, he was Governor General of this Indian subcontinent from the company from 1848 to 1856. So in history, we have lot many people or lot many generals. Most of the general, they started something new, like we just talked about Hastings, and we talked about different before that. Now Lord Dalhousie, he initiated doctrine of lapse. Because they will make any policy to get control of Indian territory. So from 1848 to 1856, he was Governor General of India, Lord Dalhousie. So he created a policy, or he initiated a policy, doctrine of lapse, that is called Vilay Niti. In Hindi, it is called as Vilay Niti. So what does it mean? It was clear that they wanted their land, they wanted the territory. So this Vilay Niti was saying, if an Indian ruler dies without any prince, that is any male heir, the next male offspring in his kingdom would lapse. That is that area will become the part of company's territory. That is, there is no one to rule, so we will rule. That is what company said. So they used this doctrine of lapse. They took Satara in 1848. They took Sambalpur in 1850. They took Udaipur in 1852. They took Nagpur in 1853. And they took Jhansi in 1854. So because of this doctrine of lapse they initiated, they took so many states. In 1856, they did what? They took this Awadh. This is the area I am showing. This is the Awadh area. So they took Awadh, but it was not like that they don't have any male heir. But they had a different argument here. They had an argument that this Awadh Nawab is not doing well with the people. This Awadh Nawab is not doing good governance. He is misgoverning. And now this is company duty because they are doing good for the country. So this is their duty, company's duty, to overthrow this misgoverned state by the Nawab. So this is their duty to throw this Nawab out of Awadh. This is what their idea was. This is what their argument was. But this Awadh, people like Awadh Nawab very much. He was loved one. So finally, because of this argument, people were not taking this argument very, healthy, in a healthy way. So finally, the humiliation Awadh Nawab got because of Lord Dalhousie and doctrine of lapse. Finally, in 1857, when the great revolt took place, right? Because you are overthrowing the Nawab. So 1857 revolt, finally Awadh also joined this revolt because of this doctrine of lapse. Now I want to show you this picture. Don't worry about the dates. Just worry about this yellow color. See, initially when they came, it was Calcutta, West Bengal and Benares area and some coastal area. Now, in few years, this every part of Indian subcontinent is yellow, 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 because they took control of most of the area. Okay, Indian subcontinent. Now coming of new administration, because if you want to rule, you have to have a good administration. So if you remember Mughal Samraj, in this we have Ijaredari, we had this Zamindari and Zaat, all these were there. So there was a kind of good governance which Akbar, Jahangir and etc. have provided. That is how they ruled for so many years. Okay. So now here we have Warren Hastings. He was Governor General from 1773 to 1785. Now in his regime, Company had Bengal. Also along with Bengal, he had Madras also, today's Mumbai, and Madras and Bombay, today's Mumbai, and Madras, today's Chennai. So how they have divided? They have divided the whole of their area into three main presidencies. So these three main presidencies were Bengal, Mumbai and Bombay. So these were presidencies. Whole state is divided into this. Okay. Now these presidencies all have one governor. So there were three governors basically. And these governors, all these governors are reporting to a supreme head which was called as Governor General, GG. Okay. So Supreme Governor is Governor General. So three presidencies, and the Governor General at that time was Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings. Now Warren Hastings did something good also. He was responsible for various reforms, especially in the justice, Nyaya, in the field of justice. Let me tell you that in 1772, a new system of justice he initiated or was established. So what was that? In each district, there were courts, two type of courts. One was the Faujdari Adalat, that is a criminal court. That is, if some killing is done or some bad thing happened, so it is Faujdari Adalat. Small problems like women-men problem or some land problem, it will be in civil court, that is Diwani Adalat. So two courts in each district, criminal court and civil court. So Faujdari is for very heinous crimes and civil court for normal things. Normal, you will not call them as criminal. So now the head of each district was district collector. And this district collector was not Indian, he was a European district collector. So these district collector, and if you see that at that time Hindu-Muslim, because mostly Muslims, the Maulvis were taking care of the rules and regulation of Muslims. Hindus were taking care of, Hindu Pandits were taking care of rules and regulation for the Hindus. So when the judges are there or district controller are there and they are European, they must know what is going on. So that they had this Maulvis also and Hindu Pandits also. Okay. But the criminal court, see the criminal courts were still under Qazi and Mufti. So criminal court was under Qazi. Qazi is basically a judge, Nyadhish. And this Mufti was what? A jury member of Muslim community, and he will give ideas to judge, that is Qazi. So Mufti will help Qazi to make decision, because Mufti is a knowledgeable person of Islam and the rules and regulation of Islam, the laws. Okay. So they had a very good idea, Mufti, and they will help Qazi. Qazi was the judge, right? So at that time, this was happening. So basic thing you have to understand is total area is divided into three presidencies: Bombay, Madras, Bengal. Okay, and all of them will have single governor, and top of them Governor General. A district will have a district collector. There will be two courts: criminal court and civil court. And this is what you have to learn. And what happened? Warren Hastings, and he also went through an impeachment. Impeachment means people said that he misgoverned Bengal. He misgoverned Bengal. So impeachment is a trial by the House of Lords of England for charges of misconduct brought against a person in the House of Commons. So we have Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. Also, they have House of Lords and House of Commons. Now, this name, please see. N.B. Halhed. His name will just come. Name will just come. Nath Bezi Halhed. Okay. So what happens here? The problem was because the Brahman Pandits. Now, Garhwali Brahmins are different. The Bengali Brahmins are different. The Gujarati Brahmins are different. So what will happen is they will have their different interpretation of laws depending upon their local areas, because they are coming from different schools of Dharma Shastra. The Dharma Shastra is Sanskrit text. Okay. So everywhere the Brahman Pandits will have different rules. So what will happen? Because the rules are different. So 1775, 11 Pandits were called and they were being asked that please compile for Hindus law, because we want everywhere same law and same punishment. Okay. Because in India, all were Hindus. Today also you see 80% plus population is Hindu population only. So they wanted a common law for Bengalis also, for Bengalis Hindus also, and for Gujarati Hindus also. So 11 Pandits, they wrote in Hindi. Now N.B. Halhed, he translated this into English. Because the European wanted in English, because the European judge, they will only understand when it is written in English. So N.B. Halhed, as I said, his name will come, he translated this content into English. And by the Regulating Act of 1773, there was a new Supreme Court. It was established. Okay. And there were local appeal courts also, like the Sadar Nizamat Adalat, like we have session courts, etc. today. So these were also being set up in Calcutta. So these were certain justice-related reforms being done at that time. So let me tell you, in a district, the principal figure, the key figure is the district collector. District collector, as the name suggests, he will collect the revenue, the taxes, etc. Revenue, taxes, he will collect. That is why he was district collector. And along with the help of certain people, he will take care of the law and order. No danga, no fasad, no ladai, no jhagda. Okay, no fight. So law and order maintenance is the work of district collector only. With the help of darogas, the police officers, the judges, he will take care that law and order of that particular area district will be maintained. Okay. So district collector, key figure of a district. Now this office, collectorate. Let me write it here. The main office, which is the collectorate here, it became the new center of power. Previously, the previous holder of authority, it changed. Now it was replaced by the collectorate. Basically the district collector. Okay. So anybody who wants power, he will be closer to this DC or collector. Now there are certain things which will come. Please understand. The company's army I am talking about. Okay. So before that, let me tell you, the colonial rule or the British Raj was totally, the power was with military strength. Because that is how they had Plassey, they had Buxar, and they controlled these Marathas and Tipu Sultan. So all these soldiers, the soldier on foot, it was the actual power of company rule. The soldiers. How did this come? Let me take you to history now. Now Mughal army, I take you back, Mughal army, if you remember Zat, how many Ghursawar, how many cavalry you had? That is the Savars, trained soldier on horseback. So how many cavalry is there? This was made in the Mughal Empire, Mughal Raj. So everyone was taught about this. They were given training in archery, tirandazi. Okay. These foot soldiers were not very important for Mughals, because whenever the fight is there, these people or foot soldier will get From whom? They will get from zamindars. They will get from sardars. Whomsoever are being given zamindari, those will provide the members on foot. So Mughal were never interested more in foot soldier. They were more interested in the soldiers on horseback, cavalry. Hope you understand. But now the things change. In British rule something changed. What happened? After Mughal Empire, after this Awadh dynasty was there, or the Nawabs, and the Banaras regime was there. So they did what? They started recruiting or giving jobs to the farmers. That you come here and will make you a professional soldier. That is, they were making these peasants and farmers as the soldier. This Awadh and Banaras after Mughal Empire. Now, the company also followed the same. Means they didn't go to Mughal idea of cavalry, but they were more interested in the foot soldier. So they did what? They did the same thing. As Awadh and Banaras were recruiting, East India Company also adopted the same methodology. They started recruiting these peasants and farmers. And they were giving jobs to them as Sepoy. Sepoy means Sipahi. Sipahi means soldier. In Hindi, we call a Sipahi as soldier. So they called them as Sepoy army. It was called as, this has come from Sipahi only. As you know, they can't spell everything. So Sepoy. So at that time, the warfare technology also changed. Because different colonies of British were not only in India, they were everywhere. So 1820, they don't require cavalry. It actually declined. They don't require these soldiers on the horseback. These British were fighting in Burma, Afghanistan, Egypt, and their soldiers were armed with muskets and matchlocks. So musket is what? It's a heavy armament. Heavy banduk. Infantry soldiers had a heavy gun. So musket is basically a gun. Okay, not a pistol, but a gun. So these were British soldiers. And matchlock means they were not no bullets, but they will put the powder and with a matchstick they will ignite it. Right now we have bullets, but at that time it was not bullet. Only they will put gunpowder and they'll ignite it. So these British were having muskets and matchlocks, and they were fighting against Burma, Afghanistan, Egypt, and various others. So now they don't require cavalry. Okay. So if you have this musket, why do you require a horse? You will just kill a horse using this musket. So if I take you to early 19th century, I'm talking about 1800 and plus. So the soldiers, these soldiers, I'm talking about the Sepoy, so Sepoy here, they were given proper training. They were trained. They were trained for discipline. They were trained for being an army man. They were trained for being a powerful man in a discipline. But the problem was, the caste, creed, all these were not being taken care. For example, if you are a Hindu and you are given beef, not beef but cow meat, what will you do? If a Muslim is given pig or provided pig or anything related to pig, these are all beyond their comprehension because it is not in their religion. Okay. So the guy and the sewer, the pig and the cow, the Indian cannot even think about that. So that was the problem. They had Sepoy and they were not thinking about the historical religious background. So that is how the revolt in 1857 it started. Okay, and this is the history, and we'll talk about this 1857 revolt in a stretch. It's a long thing. We'll talk about that. So let me conclude here that East India Company, it came purely as a trading company, no idea of ruling the country, but they controlled the colonial power because the ship would take 6 to 8 months, but because of the steamships, bhap ke engine, it would take just 2 to 3 weeks. That is around 3 weeks, 7 3 is 21 days. So they would come from UK to India. So now the army can come, the cavalry can come, the soldiers can come, the people can come. So if I can tell you, by 1857, 63% of the territory, Indian territory, and 70% of the Indian population, they were under the control of British rule. Almost, you can say, directly or indirectly, that is virtually, whole of India is under their control. Let me tell you about slave trade also. When the Dutch trading ships, when they reached the Southern Africa in the 17th century, this all slave trade began. So, the slave trade began in 17th century. What would happen? The people of this subcontinent or continent at that time, this Africa, they were captured, they were chained, they were sold in the slave market just like dogs and cats, or like mammals, cows and others. If you know this 1834, when this was abandoned, slavery ended, more than 36%, the 36,000 slaves were there. Okay, you can imagine when it was being finished. So it's a very shocking story here that a mother is there and her kids and the husband, and this trading is going on. The woman is taking somewhere else, is bought by somebody else. The kids are being bought by somebody else. Can you imagine a mother in front of her eyes seeing the children going somewhere else? This all happened. Okay guys, this is all about this topic. I hope you have a good idea about this topic now. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.